We're going to develop 6 packages, including some peculiar ones, 2 more that have to do with the Russian and Ukrainian markets. These are the centers that we're developing now. And why am I doing this introduction now? I think it's good to show what Zona Sierra is and to introduce facility management a little bit. Okay, from my perspective, what we have here is that you guys have maybe a different definition from mine. It might be slightly different. And in fact, this one is different from mine, and we're going to look at it quickly. We can refer to maintenance staff, to cleaning staff, air conditioning technicians, even security. Naturally, at malls, we have 3 clients. The principal client, who is the owner of the business, and we report to him. He's the manager of the business. We have 2 other types of clients, and we have one who leases, and the other one is a client, the user of the mall. So we'll start to talk about these questions. When we talk about facility management, we're talking about interactions and interdependency. And like I was saying before, with the panel that we have here next to me, I've arrived at a conclusion in these days that I was in charge of technical maintenance for Zona Sierra, with responsibilities in Portugal, Spain, and new markets. And I've arrived at the conclusion that facility management is different in each country. It depends on the culture and also with the way the market is set up. I've seen pretty complex situations where we've had to stop many meetings to know what the client wanted from us, what it wanted from Zona Sierra and facility management, because people have a completely different concept. That's why I was saying that in Iberia, facility management is one thing. In Asia, it's a different thing. And Ukraine or Russia, it's completely different. And here's my recommendation. If you go to a country which you're not used to, I recommend that you don't call anybody facility manager, because you could have some problems. And that wouldn't be, of course, the aim of the meeting. Because often when we mention facility management or facility manager, people don't see it from the point of view that we have here, that we're talking about here. And this is very important. You have to make a very big effort to define what facility management is. Okay, so regarding facility management, there's this aspect that it's not perceived as part of the core of the business by our client or the company we work for. It's very technical, and sometimes people just escape from that technicalities, and it's seen as a cost and not as an added value. So this means there might arise some difficulties, a lot of challenges and opportunities simultaneously. And I'll tell you why I say this. Because facing these challenges or these differences in understanding in the definition of facility management, geographical differences, the exception that they suppose to nowadays in facility managers inside companies, the way that our job might be professional. So the 2 questions that we have to make when we face these challenges are how to do it and how to be successful. When I start, as I'm talking in the technology panel, I'll start with 2 aspects that I think are basic, that have to do with rules and procedures. So this morning we're talking about the qualification of a norm of facility management, and it's absolutely essential in my opinion. It's an opportunity that will allow us to distinguish ourselves from other rules and that exist at this moment, and we're going to learn tips and tricks and the best things for that might come out of the elaboration of these rules. And these are methods. This is an organization that allows us to compare realities. It supports inspections. It gives visibility to processes. It might be good or bad, usually good. And it allows a continuity in the organization that depends on the people. And it guarantees continuous improvement. And here I could completely list the norms and rules and procedures and list the advantages, but I think that would be very boring. So I would also like to say that sometimes they aren't that positive, and they can be not as positive because they have an administrative charge associated to it, an efficacy that might not be aligned with what is necessary to do in terms of facility management. So you take your time, not just in the elaboration, but also in maintaining the rule alive. Because it might be a problem if it's not adapted to the necessities of the business. There's various examples of this in Portugal and here in Spain. We want to obtain a certification, an energetic certification, and that has a cost. And it consumes a lot of resources because it's very complex. And it also gives visibility to problems and doubts. Because sometimes it's not easy to see the things like a friend said, it's better to not to see, or eyes that don't see, heart that doesn't feel. And it gives visibility to problems that might be complicated. And additionally, there are good and bad rules, and the same thing happens with procedures. So in technical terms and in tools, what does facility management activity really imply? Usually with maintenance management or information management and operation management, it's very helped by a building management system. I think you're familiar with the concept of the building management system. Basically, there are systems that exist in buildings and that allow to manage them in an automatic and optimized way. And naturally, a facility manager uses a lot of tools in management, energy management, and client management. And there's no doubt that having well-done procedures, having the activity of facility manager duly accredited and certified is absolutely essential. I want to say that it's essential. During this Congress, we talked often about rules, certification, that our job sometimes isn't recognized, that it isn't valued. And a big chunk of this change in this scenario has to do with the thesis of push and pull. That means we have to press so that our job might be recognized, not only recognized, but also visible. That has to be communicated and see what people hope for and what they're expecting. We have to measure, to improve, and what I would call the freedom to do and to communicate. And the word that I haven't heard too much in this Congress is the word to promote. And I think I'm going to use this word and its concept associated. Facility management needs to be communicated. And to be communicated, it needs to have data. And it needs to know how to communicate. And to have data, we need to know what needs to be improved. And if there's not any of this communication, if it's not communicated to the company, or it needs to be done, the aims that have been obtained and how they're perceived by the client, we can't really value facility management and the activity next to the client. And as I was saying, we're talking here for many days, and often I've seen that the job isn't recognized. facility management isn't recognized, or the situation at the company is complicated, because aggregated value is complicated to perceive. I think it's in this concept of push and pull. We have to press organizations in the sense that we have to prove what we do, how we want to be evaluated, which capacitations we want to obtain, and that we perfectly know where we're going according to the clients, according to the aims of the client, and everything in between. We have to show that, and we have to be evaluated. And on the other side, we have the pool strategy that has a lot to do with the formation or education of facility managers. And this is a topic that was also the topic of a presentation this morning. It's very important because we have facility managers with different types of education and also with no education at all. And that's not good in the search for professionalization of facility management. And that's to obtain and educate new facility managers. That's why I think that a push and pull strategy would be very adequate. Now we'll talk about the procedure, the tools, the technology, BMS, building management system, standardizing systems, education or maintenance systems. But the aim of facility management isn't having rules or tools. The aim is to adequate yourself to the client. You have to be efficient. And it's necessary when it's necessary. It's not worth it to do overwork. Because as the Japanese say, that's cost, that's waste. And naturally, you have to create value for the client. Facility management has to show clearly which value it gives to the client and show significance and to be objective and to be able to be evaluated and to have capacities. It's not only showing or teaching, it's not showing which aims have been obtained and which ones aren't. And you won't see the value that the facility manager can give to the company. And that added value isn't being sold and it's not being recognized or known. So facility management is usually the person who has to change the light bulbs and who doesn't really have access to the core of the company. He'll never be the core of the company. So with what do we do with these difficulties? They're cultural, because our profession doesn't have unity. It still lacks a norm. With the perception that exists nowadays, even in countries where they know what facility management is, when they talk about difficulties, an image that each company has, how can we resolve that? What can we do to use that knowledge? And now the second part of the presentation starts. Now we talk about the misery, now we talk about the solutions. Or at least some ideas. There are some solutions that I can present to you, but there's one thing that we can all cultivate, which is common sense. And the first concept that I'd like to share with you is what in Portugal we call ETC, or etc. And in Spain it's called UETC. And basically, ETC is what I'm going to enumerate. With ETC, we can sort out the obstacles, trying to be efficient. And this means to automate daily tasks. Often there exist very sophisticated systems. I would say that you have to be the contrary, the opposite, to automate daily tasks that we don't have and that we take our time in executing. And this means we have to be efficient. Measuring, customizing the local culture, the old-fashioned local culture. To start to begin to work in an environment, we have to customize the local culture. Our client can be now here, tomorrow in another place, and maybe a South European country or the North European country, North African or Central African in the American continent. As we all know, cultures are different, and if we can't adapt, building a body of facility management that can be very strong, and if we can't culturize ourselves, we're not going to be successful. So this means being focused and knowing how to act in each place, and also being technical and technological. We have here the acronym SDCA, PDCA. These are techniques, and maybe we can talk about that later. We have to orient facilities, so we not only have the competencies of management. Facility manager needs also to be technical. It can be more or less management, but it has to be technical. A big part of facility management doesn't know what the technical knowledge is. There is no knowledge. And we need to focus on the business. We're not different. Like all departments in a company, we need to be aligned with the core and to be aligned with the client. And the logical thing is to worry about the client, because the client has needs, and it's important for the facility manager to know how to cater to these needs. And that's why we have, for example, customer attention. Often we cannot be in agreement with the client, but no one is always in agreement systemically with anything. And it's important to respect the differences and to be aligned with the attention to the customer. So, recommendations. How many times do we not know what a client is or not? Probably, if you were anchored in management, probably we would arrive to the conclusion that the client is not only the one who invests in our job, and it's also important to know who your client is. You're not sure. We as facility managers, we're not very sure who our client is. So we have to somehow we have to aim and find our client, and also know how to interact. I put here an expression in English: who really calls the shots? So who's really in charge? Which power does the company have? Because that person that we're interested that's in our camp, that person is going to represent the values that our client has or our company has. And this person can see our value and can act accordingly. There's a Portuguese expression that's the posture of Calimero. And this is a very Portuguese expression that means being hidden. And that's an attitude that we need to change. And I chuckle now remembering a very modest Portuguese man, José Mourinho, who said of himself that he was known as the special one. And as José Mourinho would say, we have to be special ones. And to do that, we need to do that in conformity. And as a teacher of mine said, the expression "forte inglés, then we are good." And that's the attitude that we need to possess, to find agreements with the clients and to define objectives. And they have to be completely defined and quantified with a well-defined target, and also with the time and deadlines that have to be well-defined. And who knows that if these objectives are well-defined? Because if there aren't objectives that are well-defined and ambitious, it's not worth it. Our project will lack presence in the company. We also have to eliminate bureaucracy. It's important to simplify and to align our actions with our tools and the technology implemented in the core of the company. Well, in these norms and procedures, we need to simplify them and implement them once within the category of a rule. In a factory where I worked, it was called the Rule 29002, and after that it was called ISO 9002, and we had to certify the factory and the mall with the 1400 body, but we need a rule. There's an opportunity for this rule in facility management. We know what's happening, and we can't commit the mistakes that other rules maybe had, and we have to learn what these rules have that are positive. And if it's just to have the rule in a nice dossier or put it in a nice handbook and put it on a bookshelf so no one can read this handbook, it's not worth it. And it's not worth it to have knowledge that no one uses, that no one knows about, or that no one values. And the challenge that I want to make here is clearly if we will be capable of projecting our rules like they're here, like the 9,000 or the 14,000. We need to simplify, and I'm going to talk about this now. Procedures. There are many procedures. They need to be clear and precise, and usually none of them. Very few facility managers read the specialized publications. They need to be few but good. It's not useful to have a big stack of procedures, but that are really worthless because no one knows they exist. No one wants to talk about it, and no one wants to read them. And also to have kinder formats. And I'll show you what a kind format is in simple illustrated concepts. Procedures might be illustrated, and it's a lot easier to remember the image. Because 88% of our knowledge comes through our sense of vision. It doesn't come through our hearing, or it comes through vision. 88%. And you have to be objective. And procedures nowadays and general concepts don't help anybody. So it's better to have very little, but well done and applicable. And I would also add here, if you allow, simple. In terms of methodologies and tools, I have a list. 1-point lessons, standard work, visual help that are often not used, and a simple education in this area, and usually the up and down. This procedure here has to do with approximation and the landing in the landing track in the airport of Lisbon. And the size of this procedure isn't an A3 sheet of paper, it's an A5. Everything that a pilot needs to know to land a plane with any dimension, once this plane is within the characteristics of weight and dimensions that are standardized for this airport, it's here. It's not necessary to have more information to land the plane. It doesn't matter the size. To land a plane with 400 people, it's possible to reflect it in a sheet of paper this size. So my question is why we have procedures with 57 pages. This is a question that should interest us. And we have here the example of a one-time lesson that's very illustrated. We've all had our fights with the Xerox machines or with a copier, and it's very easy. It's to see what you have to do. When you have difficulties organizing a handbook, some sheets like these help a lot. Stock levels, you don't need a written procedure. It's enough if the picture is there. These procedures to act, plan, do, and verify again, and this is very accessible. And these are other questions, creativity versus innovation. And also organizational behavior. Facility management isn't completely immune to the organization. And initiative and productivity. So to sum up, I'm going to, I only need 2 minutes to finish. We need common sense, discernment, That's why we have education, experience, knowledge, pragmatism, adaptation to reality, to know how and when to proceed. It's not only knowing how to do something, but when you have to do it, and organize. And this is part of the core, and paying attention to the client. And I come back to this because facility management doesn't always know who the client is, and it doesn't work for its client. It works for something that we don't really know what it is. So to sum up in this topic of tools and technology, and the last slide, I'm going to stop here for not more than a minute. In the end, with tools and technology, we have the most important tool, which is the human being, the facility manager. And in this Congress, we're talking about how using our means of production and of communication, we need to communicate the results. We need to prove that we're good, that we generate value. And this is super important. What isn't communicated can't be seen, and it doesn't exist. And we need a human resource that are real stores, and in the truest sense of the word, that they have negotiation skills. And I haven't talked about this. A facility manager is a negotiator. He needs to have very good negotiating skills. A facility manager needs to know how to create empathy, and is always negotiating with the clients, with the providers, or whoever. So every day is a day of negotiation. If the facility manager doesn't have high negotiating skills, if he doesn't know how to create empathy, I would say that he doesn't have any knowledge of the details, and his behavior in the organization is a vague idea, and I wouldn't say that he's doing it well. And you have to be lean. So here's the message. Being lean is being simple. Thank you very much.